Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. Now that the motor's out, I've been able to start stripping out the engine bay fully to start prepping it for any repairs and paintwork that needs to happen. So let's go and have a bit of a look at how I'm going. So you can see we've got a bit of excess stuff here. This sort of a bit of a pile here, it's all stuff that's coming out that's going to get sort of junked. As you can see, there's the old Haltech the 11 version 2 ECU there. This EM Pro 2 thing that was an engine monitoring system. Personally, I think it was probably a pretty good unit back in the day, but it's, you know, it's old tech now. That'll all be integrated into the Haltech dash and everything. Blitz turbo timer, crap like that, and just heaps and heaps of old stereo wiring and crap that's all been pulled out from under the dash just as part of feeding all wires back through and all that sort of stuff, you know. Over here you can see a bit of the main body loom and the engine loom all sort of hanging under the car. I've got it disconnected on one side over there to sort of bring it back through. I'm currently struggling over this side to get this lot of cable disconnected from in behind the back of the fuse box in there. That's really awkward to get to, but I'll just have to persevere and get to it. But yeah, it's looking fairly sort of clear in the engine bay now, folks. So as you can see, it's reasonably sort of stripped out there. There's a bit of a horror story down there where the fluid's been leaking from the brake master cylinder and clutch master cylinder and everything. There's you know, quite a lot of surface rust on everything. Fortunately, it is only surface rust though, so there's no real repairs other than just cleaning it all up and everything. And you can see it's actually even bled through to the other side. So if we have a look here, this is the other side of it under the inner guard there, and you can see what I was saying before about how the brake fluid will travel under the paint. So there was just a couple little bubbles on this side, and I've started scraping it off, and you can see that there's actually surface rust underneath all the existing paint and everything there. So basically we've got to wire wheel off everything that we can till we get back to sections where there's no more surface rust underneath it all, you know, and basically we'll probably end up stripping the whole thing out over here. But yeah, so that's what happens, folks. Brake fluid is just a horrid thing. And these master cylinders, obviously way past their use by date. They're sitting over here on the bench. Let's have a bit of a look at them, eh? So this is the old clutch master cylinder, folks. You can see just the state of the thing on the back here. You can see it's still actually wet with brake fluid. This thing has been dripping brake fluid for God knows how long. God knows how long. You see by all the rust staining and everything how long it's been in need of replacement for. And the sad state that things get into if you just don't do maintenance on your vehicle. Why someone would let something get so bad, you know, without replacing it is just beyond me. Same deal with the brake master cylinder, folks. It's you know, in a very sad condition. Obviously been leaking fluid for a really long time. Why you wouldn't just replace it, you know, or take care of it in some manner, whether that be a seal kit or whatever, you know, it's just beyond me that people just let stuff turn to crap when there's really no need. Astounds me every day, folks. People are happy to do things like put flashy blue silicone hoses on their car, but they won't do something like replace a brake master cylinder that's leaking fluid. I don't know. What do you do, folks? What do you do? And unfortunately, folks, it's not the most exciting stuff to make YouTube videos about at this stage of the game. It's just hard work and lots of it. So it's obviously taken quite a lot of work to get the body shell to this stage, and it's going to take a lot more before there's any real major progress that's worth kind of looking at. So I'll flick the camera off, folks. I'll come back when I've got anything major sort of done that's worth a bit of a look at, or anything that's worth filming. If I rebuild any particular parts, I'll give you a bit of a look. But for me it could be a few days, but for you guys it could be just seconds. So I'll see ya probably very soon. Okay. Oh, you're still there. Thanks for hanging around, guys. Well, we've progressed a little bit further. The engine and body harnesses are out on the ground. Mate, what a job. What a job. Anyway, and the engine bay is now clear. Actually folks, before we look at the engine bay, I'll give you a look in the interior of the car in the front, and I'll show you exactly how much you have to dismantle to get these wiring looms and the brake booster and all that sort of stuff out. So come with me guys. And there it is folks, a major dismantling of the front of the vehicle. All the dashboard and everything's out. The AC is all sort of stripped apart. The main fuse box is out down there. That was one of the hardest things folks, getting the driver's side here in Australia, getting the fuse box out, because the wiring loom from this side of the engine bay there comes through in behind the fuse box and plugs into the back of it in a lot of spots, and it's so hard to get out, mate, so hard. And to get the you know, the engine harness out, I'll go around the other side and I'll give you a bit of a look from there. You can see I've got the aircon all sort of removed, because the only way you can get to the engine wiring loom and release it, because there is a clip on the back of the firewall that secures it, is to remove the center of the AC unit there. That's it, sort of sitting in the middle there, and also obviously everything else associated with it. So definitely not an easy job folks, and hours and hours and hours and hours of work getting all this stuff apart just to be able to pull a couple of wires out. But there's no way around it folks, it has to be done. Alright, let's have a look in the engine bay. Looking pretty damn flash there, not a lot to get in the way. Little pipe down there, but that's nothing, that's just temporarily held up with all my billet fuel line brackets that I made before. So I've just got to get the hoist back up to get that off, so that's nothing. And we're pretty much clear folks, pretty much clear. Obviously we've got to now start repairing all of the you know, the surface rust and cleaning up all the paint and all that sort of stuff. A lot of prep. This isn't going to be one of those fancy show engine bays folks, it's just basically going to be a repaint. I'm not going to go to the trouble of filling up all of the non-used factory holes and, you know, getting rid of brackets like over here where I've deleted the sort of clutch bleed and the you know, the Hikers bloody solenoid setup that was there and that. And that's not really what I want to achieve here folks. I basically want the whole engine bay to look standard. Nothing looks sort of out of place, if that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but yeah, it's definitely not going to be a show car in the sense of everything being smoothed over and all that sort of stuff. But it will essentially be like a completely restored vehicle, you know, when the build's finished and all that sort of stuff. So I look into this engine bay folks, and all I see is just hours and hours and hours and hours of hard work. But it's got to happen folks. I'm not going to go to bed one night and then get up in the morning and it's all done for me. The only way it's going to happen is if I do it. So I guess I'd better get into it folks. Not really the best sort of stuff to film, but I'll certainly keep you guys updated. See you again. Right guys, a little bit of progress so far with it. I've been busy cleaning up all this area now. It's all sort of back to bare metal, and it goes down a fair way right under the car actually. So there's quite a few hours work in getting that that clean, and I've also been doing the same thing on this side. You can see in there, that's the original area that I cleaned up where the battery tray was rusted out, and I just sort of temporarily cleaned that up before the engine was out, but I'm going over that again. We'll see if I can get a bit more light in there. Yeah, it still needs quite a lot of clean up in there. I've only really just sort of started on that, but it's pretty good, you know, it's pretty good. A lot of the staining is just sort of from a rust converter that I used. But yeah, you can see it's, you know, it's getting there. So I might throw it up on the hoist and I'll show you how far the brake fluid's travelled under the paint. You know, how far underneath it's gone. So give me a second folks and we'll have a look underneath. Alrighty, so you can see we've had to sort of pay quite a bit of attention to it under here. We've had to go all the way back to here, you know, grinding away at the paint and all the rust and everything. That's how far back it took until there was no longer surface rust underneath the paint, you know. It is quite a process folks. Of course I've had to dig out all the seam sealer because, you know, there will be probably a little bit of surface rust in behind these seams where it's managed to penetrate through gaps in the seam sealer. So that's been quite an ordeal getting that out so that I can drip some rust converter right down into the seal and hopefully wick it all the way in behind it and everything. But you see it's getting pretty good. So it looks like it's had a bit of a massage here, probably for a bit of clearance on one of the dump pipes or something. You know, a few lumps and bumps, bit of a mark up here that I've cleaned up where it's obviously had the motor taken out through the top, and they've you know, bashed it up underneath the transmission tunnel there. I'd say the gearbox has probably done that on the way out, the bell housing or something. This side over here's been caressed quite a bit with a big hammer to get clearance, probably for the dump pipe on this side. I did notice that a long time ago with the vehicle that you know, there was a real clearance problem in here, and that's how they've done it. They've just beat the crap out of it with a hammer and smashed it all in. Obviously I'm going to have to repair that, so that'll all just be popped all, but hopefully I'll be able to pop all that back out and just clean it up as per sort of factory, you know. And I will be making my own dump pipes for the car, so I'll be able to make sure all the clearances are right from the get-go, so there's no need to do anything like this, because that's just shithouse in my opinion. Yeah, so the next place I'll be moving to is going to be out here. So obviously this is the opposite side to where we've just got all that bare metal, and you can see that you've got exactly the same scenario here. Now this was all completely covered and there was no sign of this this surface rust on the panel, but there was a couple of little loose bits of paint, you know, that I just kind of picked off, and it's just like, wow, that's all rusty under there. What's going on? So if you see, wherever I sort of pick at it, there's rust. There's rust under the paint. So this has been caused by brake fluid wicking through the bolt holes. There's a bolt hole up here and these guys, and probably through the seam in the back there as well. And it's done exactly the same thing. It's wicked through underneath the paint and everything, and just, you know, started to rust all this. So what I'll do, folks, at the moment it's only you know, it's not that big an area that we're talking about, but I guarantee when I get it all sanded off, it'll probably be maybe twice the size that it is there that we've got to take off before we get to fresh metal that doesn't have surface rust on it. But maybe even more, I guess we'll see. So I'm gonna hook into that with some wire wheels and different stuff, and I'll show you how far back I had to take it once it's done. So I'll see you in a minute. So that's not too bad now, folks. I'm pretty sure I've gone back far enough in every direction that I haven't hit any surface rust under the paintwork there for a while. I've made sure I've gone back to all the seams where it possibly could have wicked brake fluid down. As you know, the fluid damaged area is directly behind all this, and that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. You saw the amount of surface rust that was underneath everything. You know, fortunately we got to this in time. There are no rust holes or anything like that. A little bit of pitting here and there. That's probably one of the worst areas up there is for pitting and whatnot, but it's only very minor. So we'll be able to just, you know, give that a hit with some rust converter and then some epoxy primer over the top of it, and then carry on with all our other finishes. So pretty happy with that. Always good to find stuff like that, folks, so you can take care of it at the right time. So I'll just keep carrying on and I'll show you the next bit of progress. Bloody awesome. Right guys, I applied rust converter to the Fairlady in these areas here about 24 hours ago, so it's all sort of nice and dry. And this is what I put on there, folks. It's just like a clear liquid in just a pump spray bottle, you know. I've used it before. It seems to be quite good. There's so many different rust converters on the market. Some of them are easy to use, some of them are shit to use, some of them I really don't like, and some of them I really love, and this is kind of my favourite. Like I say, it's really easy to apply. It is just a clear liquid, so when you spray it on, it starts to turn areas where there's a bit of surface rust blacker first, and eventually it'll turn all the metal sort of black. But what I have to do now, according to the instructions on this, is after 24 hours, wipe the whole thing over with a damp cloth, and it'll remove any kind of excess or any areas where it doesn't really want to be, and sort of tidy it up. And then once that's done, I'll dry it off with some compressed air, and then I'll spot prime it with some epoxy primer. And then once that's done, we will then rub back the whole engine bay and then hit the whole thing with a 2-pack primer before we get it ready for paint. So I'll just grab a damp cloth, I'll give this a bit of a wipe over, and I'll show you the outcome. And that's the result, folks. That's just a pretty decent sort of a scrub with just a rag and a bucket of water, which will just remove any areas where the stuff really doesn't want to be, you know, where there's no reason for it to be, where it's good metal underneath. You know, no sign of any sort of rust and stuff, and it clings onto where it needs to be. And like with you know, a lot of automotive coatings, you just don't want unnecessary film thickness unless you have to have it there, of course. The beauty about using a very watery product like this rust converter is that you can really pump it into the seams, you know, where you've got lap joints and seams and stuff, where I've dug all the seam sealer out from, to flush this stuff right into all the joints. And it does really go in there and wicks in really deep sort of thing. So those inaccessible areas, at least you've got some sort of a chance of preventing any sort of further rust or dealing with any surface rust that's there already. I feel I've done a really good job of that. It's really, I really pumped it in there until it was actually running out of the bottom of the chassis and stuff. Like it, you know, it's really had a good sort of a serve of it. So the next thing to do, folks, is I'm going to mask up a few things, you know, like where the steering shaft comes through and, you know, various holes and things. And as I mentioned just before, I'll give it a coat of epoxy primer, and then it can just basically become part of the whole thing, which will then need to be rubbed down, 2-pack primed, etc. I'll mask it up, I'll get some epoxy primer on it, and I'll give you another look. There it is, guys. 2 coats of epoxy primer, and we're looking really sweet. So obviously now that area is on par with the rest of the vehicle, which will need to be rubbed down by hand, and then the whole lot re-primed over the top, you know, with a 2-pack primer. There's also some repairs to do, obviously, to the hammer caressing areas on the front firewall and all that sort of stuff. But at least now the whole engine bay area can be dealt with on the same level, you know. So I think I'll call this episode here, folks. Next episode, well, actually I'm not sure what the next episode's going to be. I'll either be carrying on with this, or I'll be going on to something else. I do actually have a couple of different things going on in the background here. You know, that's, you know, half-shot videos and stuff. Bit of work I've been doing on the engine and some of the ancillaries and bits and pieces and stuff. You may get a bit of an odd order of things in the next few videos because it's all a bit sort of patchy at this stage. There's lots of work and not a whole heap of real great stuff to film, but that will all happen you know, reasonably quickly, that I'll get over this patch of just massive labour input and start getting onto stuff that's a little bit better to watch. So as always, folks, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hope you're enjoying Project Fairlady. It's you know, it's quite an in-depth build. And remember, folks, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and all that great stuff. And I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.